Hello, everybody. I am doing my power rankings for the first time this season. I meant to do them last week. However, I forgot to hit record. But I got record pressed this time, fortunately. Okay, so let's start with the power rankings for the NFL going into week 10. So we're going to start with the bad teams, and I'm not going to elaborate on these. These teams are clearly bad, and everybody knows it, and there's no chance that they're doing anything this season. So 32 Titans, 31 Jets, 30 Saints, 29 Raiders, 28 Falcons, 27 Bengals. If you lose to any of these teams, you're clearly not a top contender in the NFL. So I'm just going to start with that. All right. Moving on. Our next tier. Missing the playoffs. These teams are scrappy, but they have no chance of making the playoffs. Their season is over. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these ones either. So at 26, you got the Giants, the Commanders, or the Commies, Redskins, however you prefer. They're 3-6, but I doubt they'll win more than one more game this season, so they are missing the playoffs. The Dolphins get surprising wins here and there, but for the most part, they suck. If you have them in the remaining schedule, you are a lucky team. The Cowgirls, they have a okay offense, but not great. They're great against bad defenses, but when you get them against a good defense, like we just saw this last weekend against the Cardinals, they are terrible. They are definitely not making the playoffs, and I'll be surprised if they even go to 500. They'll probably be a 7, 8-1 team by the end of the season at best. Then at 22, you got the Panthers. They have a winning record so far, but they're not good. They're beating some surprising teams, however, which is crazy, but they don't belong in the discussion for sure. But at 22, they'll probably win a couple more games, but not against contending teams. So they'll miss the playoffs for sure. The Browns, a really good defense. It feels like a waste of defense because this defense keeps them in games against really good teams. I'm talking like top tier teams, top 10 teams. So they'll get some surprising wins here and there, but they're not going to do enough. They're already down 6 games. There's no way they're making the playoffs. They're going to, at best, have 9 losses. So that's not going to do it for either conference this season. Moving on to the bottom of the bad, or the top of the bad, we'll see. The top of the bottom half of the NFL. They might make the playoffs if they get lucky and win a couple of games against the intermediate level teams, which are 11-14, who, are they good? Are they bad? Well, they're not bad, but they're not good. They could be good, but they also might not be. So they might be mid. So they might actually belong in this column as well. But we'll have to see about that. So the first one, the Cardinals. The Cardinals just beat the Cowgirls. No big deal, but they have been in every game that they've played this season. They haven't lost by a significant amount, although the Seahawks should have blown them out. The Seahawks game should have been a 30-6 game, but the refs took a touchdown away from Seattle and made some pretty bad calls to keep 2 of the final drives alive for the Cardinals, which allowed them to score touchdowns. Without the refs making those bad calls, they don't score more than 6 points, and the Seahawks walk away with 30. So that should have been 30-6. So the Cardinals hanging in there with good teams, but can't seem to win against them. But they do beat bad teams and mid teams. So, Cardinals maybe one of the top of the bottom half. So, that's where they are. Next, we have the Texans. The Texans. Where were we? Sorry. The Texans at 3-5. They definitely have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but their offense just can't get it done. And they should have won against the Broncos this last weekend, but they lost their starting QB. I think if he doesn't go out, they win this game. Not by a lot, but they win it by like 21-18, something around there, maybe 22-18. But yeah, they're they can play spoiler for some of the better teams, but as far as beating like the top 10, not likely. Well, they have beat one of the top 10. So that's not 19 Texans. 18, you have the Vikings. They're 4-4 after beating. Who did they beat? They beat a pretty decent team. I can't remember who off the top of my head right now. But as far as like making a playoff run, they could. I could see it happening, but they'd have to beat Green Bay. They'd have to beat their other competition, the Lions. I don't see them beating the Lions. Definitely not twice. Oh, they did beat the Lions. So they got their one, but I don't think they're going to beat them a second time. So I think your Vikings are they're gonna play spoiler for the Green Bay Packers, I think. But the Lions are winning the NFC North. You might get a 7th seed out of the NFC North too. We'll see. We'll see how the Green Bay and Vikings thing pans out. Next, we have the Steelers. Okay, the Steelers are one of those teams where it's like they're kind of like a test team. So, cat's out of the bag now. So, the Steelers, teams that beat them are likely in the upper half of the NFL. But if you lose to the Steelers, that's a clear sign that you're definitely not a top 10 team. You might make the playoffs as a wild card, but there's no way you're winning a division if you can't beat the Steelers. I don't know if the Steelers are going to win their division. I highly doubt it, but they can play spoiler for a few people, and I think they will. They're 5-3. We'll see how it goes. I think they might get to 9-8 or 10-7 at the best, but I don't see them getting beyond that. But they're in the AFC, so 10-7 might get them into the playoffs. 9-8 might even. We'll see. We'll see how that all pans out. Next, the Jaguars, another team that's kind of on the cusp. They're not really good, but a barometer for telling how good your team is by beating them. The better you beat them by, the better your team probably is, but that's also not a guarantee. It also depends on how injured or how healthy your team is. Like when Seattle beat them, Seattle had a lot of injuries in the secondary, and Derek Hall was out, and yeah, the defense was just missing like 4 of the 11 starters. So the Seahawks only managed to beat them 20-12, but injuries played a big part in that. So we'll go with what I said initially. And then you got the Bears. Rounding out the bottom of the mid-tier. Like these teams, a couple of these teams might push out some of the current playoff ranking teams, but I only think there's like 3 that could possibly do it, and the Texans are one, the Vikings are another, and the Steelers. The Jaguars, I don't think are going to make a push for the playoffs. I think they're going to just fall short. They might be 8-9, maybe 9-8, but they're not going to. Yeah, they're not going to make it. The Bears, they're definitely not going to make it because their division is stronger than them, and they're going to lose 4 more games at least. I think they're going to lose 6 more games out of their next 9. So they might finish 8-9, which means they're not making the playoffs. All right, that's enough for this tier. Next, we're going to move to the teams that are likely to make the playoffs, but they might miss it if things don't go too well for them. And it's very possible that things won't go super great for a couple of these teams. All right. Start with the Ravens. The Ravens they have Lamar Jackson, which means you could never 100% count them out. But at the same time, they've already lost 5 games, and I don't see them winning out. So I think they could easily lose 3 more games out of their next 9. If they lose 3 more games, they're definitely not winning their division. And they might even miss the playoffs. Next up, we have the 49ers. At 6-3, the 49ers have done more than anyone could have possibly imagined they would do. For them to be at this record with all the injuries they have is pretty incredible. But they're not going to win these tougher games with how injured they are. I don't think they're beating the Rams this week. And then the Cardinals might be able to beat them at least once. And I just think, their schedule coming up. Hold on, let's see. So on their remaining schedule for the 49ers, they have the Rams, the Cardinals, the Panthers. That's a win. The Browns could shock us and win that game because they do have a really good defense. And with how injured the 49ers are, it's possible they lose. I don't think they will. I think they'll win that game. But they could possibly lose. They're going to beat the Titans. Then they got the Colts. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I don't think the Colts are as strong as people are giving them credit for because they haven't really beat any good teams in their good windows. We'll all explain more on that when we get there. And then the Bears, that's a win. And then to round out the season, the 49ers finish with the Seahawks in Seattle. And depending on where Seattle is, if they have the division wrapped up or the number 1 seed wrapped up or both, then I can see the Seahawks playing their starters and losing that game to the 49ers. But only in those 2 scenarios. Outside of that, if the Seahawks need a win there, the Seahawks are going to win that game because the 49ers are just too depleted to stand toe-to-toe with Seattle right now. Week 1, they beat us. Yes, us, because I'm a Seahawks fan. I'll let that out of the bag right now. They beat us, but there were 2 things going on there. First, the Seahawks played 1 series in the preseason for the starters. The starters on the offense only went out there for 1 drive. They scored a touchdown, and then they got taken out. I don't believe that the starters had enough time to gel together, And when you could see that in the game in week 1, they looked tired, they looked unready, unprepared, and a little bit confused. But I think if they would have had at least a half a game to gel together in the preseason, I think they win that game. Like, maybe not pretty, but they win it. Because it was really a fantastic play by Nick Bosa, which caused a fumble from Darnold to lose that game. Because we were in scoring position. We were in the red zone. Like, there, he was about to throw a touchdown pass, but our defender got pushed into, no, our O lineman got pushed into Darnold, which caused him to fumble the ball. San Fran recovered it. That ended the game. Outside of that, I think Seahawks win that game. But let's move on. Next, the Chargers. The Chargers are sitting at 6-3. But the Chargers also are a team that really haven't beat any extremely good teams. Here we go. Let's show you this. I'll turn the camera so we can see it better. All right. So, this is the win-losses for the Chargers. They beat the Chiefs. You could argue that's a good win, but the Chiefs weren't good at that point in the season. They weren't doing good at all. Their record shows that. Like, they weren't ready yet. And I don't think they're as good as they were 2 seasons ago. And last year, they shouldn't have even made it to the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. They got lucky with some very, very fortunate referee calls in their favor. We'll just put it that way. So they beat the Raiders. Big whoop. Everyone's beating the Raiders. The Raiders suck. Geno Smith sucks. Pete Carroll's not a good coach because he keeps hiring people that he likes rather than hiring people that would be good for the job. He's really been having a bad habit of that for the last, 8 years, which has caused the Seahawks downfall, and at the same time caused us to finally wisen up and get rid of him. So glad he's gone. He's a detriment. He's not going to be a winning coach in the NFL ever again. And then the Broncos. You could argue the Broncos are a good win. But you could also argue that the Chargers got lucky to win that game. And it's arguable how good the Broncos really are. We'll have to see. They play the Chiefs this week. We'll see. That'll be a really good test to determine how good the Chiefs are and how good the Broncos are. Because both of them are definitely like wild card, or they're definitely playoff contender teams. But one of them is definitely getting the playoffs. The other one might miss. We'll have to see. Then they beat the Dolphins by 2 points. Not good. The Dolphins suck. If you can't beat them by a healthy margin, that's not a good sign. So there's that. The Vikings. This is a good win over the Vikings. The Vikings are only 4-4 though. So how good are they? You can't say that's a great win because the Vikings are just at 500. And then they beat the Titans 27-20. Also not a good win because if you're playing the Titans, you should be spanking them. You should be beating them by no less than 2 touchdowns because they are that terrible. And then you got their losses. They lost to the Giants. The Giants are bad. I thought the Giants were okay, but I was wrong. The game against the 49ers proved that. I actually picked them to beat the 49ers because I thought with how injured the 49ers were that the Giants could win. Damn, I was wrong. I was so wrong. But the Giants suck. And if you lose to the Giants, that's a clear indication that you're not that good of a team. The Commies beat them 27-10. Congratulations. Everyone's going to beat them. They also suck. Oh, no, you lost to them. You lost to the Commies. My bad. 27-10. That's terrible. Like, Seattle just smoked the Commanders 38-14. And the only reason they got 14 is because the Seahawks started playing prevent defense. That's the only reason they scored. If Seattle would have kept the foot on the gas, I think it's a shutout. And Seattle could have scored like 50 plus. And it could have been like 50-0 easily. So yeah, if you lose to the Commanders, not good. And then you get beat pretty handily by the Colts. Like I said, I don't think the Colts are that good. I think the Colts are overrated because they beat up on a lot of bad teams. And the 2 good wins that they got, we'll come to that. We'll come to that later. But that rounds up the Chargers. All right. So the Chargers, a good team, but still might miss the playoffs entirely because they're not really that good. That's my take on it. So everybody's trying to ride their nuts saying, oh, the Chargers are great. No, they're not. They don't belong in the top 10, clearly. Packers, number 11. So another team that everybody's on their nuts. The Packers are not good. They're 5-2-1. Let me show you who their wins and losses are. Bam. They beat the Lions when the Lions were not playing good, when the Lions were sucking ass. Congratulations. They beat the Commanders. Everyone should be beating the Commanders. No big deals. No big deal at all. That's not something to hang your hat on. The Bengals, also no big deal. The Bengals have no defense. They have a decent offense, but no defense. So you should be smoking the Bengals. Everyone should be. And they barely beat the Cardinals. 27-23. Granted, the Cardinals have played well enough to stay in pretty much every game this year. The only game that they should have been dominated in, but the score doesn't reflect, is against Seattle. Every other game, they've played pretty well. And that's just what that is. And then they beat the Steelers. Great. Seahawks beat the Steelers too. 31-17. And that game wasn't even as close as the score showed. The only reason the Packers scored 17 is because of 2 very, very fortunate turnovers in their favor to give them extremely good field position. They only had to make like 2 or 3 plays to score touchdowns. So, and that happened twice. So 14 of their 17 points were gifts. They're not good. The Steelers, they're going to mess around and maybe make the playoffs, but you can't say you're a good team because you barely beat the Steelers. I mean, they're a barometer team. That means if you beat them, you're in the upper half of the league, but it's not like a world beating. And you beat them by less of a margin than Seattle did. And they actually earned those points instead of being gifted those points. All right. And then you lost to the Browns. That's pretty bad. Losing to the Browns is, granted they have a really good defense, but you can only score 10 against them. That shows you're not very good. I don't care what you want to say. You want to ride the Packers nuts as much as you want. I don't care. You can't lose to the Browns and say you're a good team. The Cowgirls. You tied with the Cowgirls. The Cowgirls have 0 defense. 0. And they scored 40 on you, which means how good is your defense? That means your defense is crap. You allowed the Cowgirls 40 points. The Cardinals just allowed them 7. Well, 10 if you want to get technical. They allowed them a touchdown and a field goal. But the Cardinals allowed them 10 points. You allowed them 40. You suck, Packers. You're not good. You're barely going to make the playoffs. You might miss them. We'll see. The Vikings might push you out. Congratulations. You're not good because you lost to the Panthers. All of your tie and your 2 losses mean you're shit. You're garbage. Anyone trying to ride your nuts right now is dumb. No practicality. You look at the rest of their season. They got the Eagles. loss. Giants, they'll probably win that because everyone beats the Giants. Vikings, who knows? That could be a win. That could be a loss. I think they're going to split at least. Lions, that's a loss. You beat the Lions in week 1, but the Lions are playing better now. They're back. They're coming back to their original form. How good are they? I don't know. But they're better than you. Then the Bears. You're going to win that one because the Bears suck. They have no defense. They have an offense, but no defense. The Broncos. Who knows? You'll probably lose that game. The Bears. You'll probably beat them. You'll probably sweep the Bears. Congratulations. And then the Ravens. I don't know how good the Ravens are yet, which is why it's a question mark. But it's very possible you could lose that one too. And then the Vikings. Who knows? They might sweep you. They might just sweep you. You're that bad. You're not good. Stop riding the Packers nuts. Packers fans, I'm sorry. Your team is blah. Blah, blah, blah. They can go 8-1, but they could do as good as 11-5-1, which means they're not probably winning their division and they're not getting a home playoff game. They might barely squeak into the playoffs by that half a game. That's it. All right, moving on. These are the top 10 teams coming up. These teams, any one of them could win the Super Bowl. Depends on how things fall and depends on how lucky they get. But I could see a scenario in which any of these 10 teams win the Super Bowl. Although I think a few of them are pretenders. And I think a few of them will be out of the top 10 in the next 4 weeks. You'll see when we get to them. Starting at number 10, the Colts. The Colts have beaten a lot of bad teams. They've beaten 2 decent teams, but look at when they beat them. Oop. Yeah. So you beat the Dolphins. Congratulations. Everyone beats the Dolphins. The Broncos. That's probably your best win right there. But you barely beat them. You beat them by 1 point. 1 point. Congratulations. Then you smoke the Titans. You should smoke the Titans. Everyone should smoke the Titans. They suck. The Raiders. You smoke them. Everyone should do that too. They suck. The Cardinals. You barely beat the Cardinals. Congratulations. Every team has pretty much beaten them, except for the really awful ones. Chargers, 38-24. That's a good win over the Chargers, but how good are the Chargers really? I mean, I think they're barely a playoff team, if they're lucky. If they make the playoffs, they're one and done. Same with the Colts. You make the playoffs, you're one and done. And then the Titans again, 38-14. Whoop-de-freaking-do. Everyone beats the Titans. Now let's look at your losses. The Rams, that's excusable. You can lose to the Rams. They're a good team. They're one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. Bar none, hands down. Whatever you want to say. The Rams are a good team. You can lose to them, and it's not the season ending. But here, the Steelers, 27-20 against the Steelers. Good teams beat the Steelers. How good are the Colts really? You can't beat the Steelers? You lost by a touchdown. That means you're not that good. That means you're about the same as the Steelers. And where were the Steelers? Number 17. I can see the Colts being at number 16 or number 18. That's where they really belong. You're not a top 10 team realistically, but you're there because of your record. And you got some points for stomping on bad teams like you should, but you also lose points for not stomping the decent teams that you beat. You should have beat them by better margins. You didn't. Sorry. But the Chargers, or the Colts, my bad. The Colts are going to likely make the playoffs. Because their remaining schedule is weak. They got the Falcons. Win. Chiefs, I don't know. That's probably a loss. Texans, who knows? Jaguars, probably a win, but they could lose that one. Then you got the Seahawks. You're definitely losing to the Seahawks. Seahawks are going to smoke you. 49ers, you'll probably lose that game, but with how injured they are, you might squeak out a win. Then the Jaguars. I think you'll at least win one against the Jaguars. And then the Texans might beat you a second time because the Texans have a really good defense. We'll see. Colts, you're not a top 10 team. Realistically, you're only getting there right now because your schedule or because your record and you have a fairly decent schedule coming up. I think your floor is 9-8, but your ceiling's 14-3 based on the remaining schedule. But you're gonna make the playoffs and then you're gonna be bounced out. Sorry, Colts. But if things go your way, well, no, there's no way you're winning the Super Bowl. You might get to the Super Bowl, but you're not winning it. All right, next. The Lions. Don't know what to think about the Lions. They should be a good team. They should be one of the best teams in the NFC, but they're sitting at 5-3. Let's look deeper into them. Okay, here's their wins. They beat the Bears. That's a win you should get, 52-21. That's what you should do to the Bears. All right, so you did what you're supposed to do there. The Ravens. The Ravens weren't good at that time of the year. Clearly, everyone, look at their record. They're 3-5. You got them at a bad time for them. You beat them 38-30. That's, who knows what to think about that right now. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be neutral. It's probably neutral right now because of how they were at the beginning of the season. You beat the Browns handily. You're supposed to. The Browns have no offense. They have a good defense, but so you put in 34 points on a good defense, that means your offense is good at least. Bengals. Beat the Bengals by 13. You should have beat them by more, but, it's still a good beat. It's still a 13-point victory. I'll still count it. And here's your one good victory. You beat the Bucks 24-9, but when you beat them, they were injured as hell. They have no receivers. And they're just injury riddled right now. How good can you really be? We have to see you win some better games coming up. Otherwise, I don't think you're going to go very far. I think you'll probably win your division, but you'll lose in the divisional round probably because you lost to the Packers by 14 points in week 1. Granted, it's week 1, so I'll give you some leeway there. But then you lost to the Chiefs, 30-17. And the Chiefs have not been that great this year. Like I said, we'll have to see going forward how good the Chiefs actually are. But as of right now. And then you have this loss to the Vikings. Not the worst loss you could have, but also not good. You can't lose to the Vikings because they're a mid-team. They might be a high mid-team, but they're still a mid-team. You can't do that. Come on, Lions. What are you doing? I do. Okay, now let's look at your schedule going forward. So you got the Commies. You're going to win that. Everyone's going to beat them. You got the Eagles. I don't know. The Eagles are definitely one of the better teams in the NFL right now. Maybe they're one of the top 3 for sure. We'll have to see how they fare against the other top 3 teams, but they beat one of them already. We'll see when it comes to it. But then you got the Giants. You're going to win that. You got the Packers. Hopefully you win that. You shouldn't let the Packers beat you. You should be running that division. On paper, you're the better team. Hands down. You got the Cowgirls. You're going to win that one. The Rams. You're probably going to lose that one, but who knows? You could manage to pull out a win. Hopefully you do, because that'll help me out. The Steelers. I got that marked as a question mark, but I think you'll win that game. You're better than them. The Steelers are like the middle team. They're like that bar that you beat them, you're better than the bottom half of the league. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're top 10. It just means you're better than the bottom half of the league. And the Vikings, I don't know how that's going to go, but I think you should win that one too. And then the Bears, you'll win that one. So for your floor, I think if everything goes really badly for you, you're 9-8. You missed the playoffs, but I think your ceiling's 12-5. Like, that's probably going to win your division. Maybe just barely, but it's going to win your division. So you'll probably be like the third or fourth. It'll be the third seed at 12-5. Because I think the fourth seed's going to be some like 10-7 team or 9-8 team that doesn't actually belong in the playoffs. But their division is so bad that somebody's got to win it. So there you go, Lions. I think you're going to bounce back. I think you're going to be solidified in the top 10. But for now, I got to see it. That's why I have you at number 9. Next, Chiefs, number 8. And this is a big if. I'm being very generous, Chiefs. Chiefs fans, your team is, what are they right now? Are they good? Are they bad? Nobody knows. But you do have Patrick Mahomes, and that's the reason why you're up here at number 8. That's the only reason. Because at your record, you don't belong at 9-8. Or you don't belong at number 8. You belong at like number 12 or 13. So be happy. I'm being nice to you. Chiefs, here we go. They beat the Giants. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Everyone does. You beat the Ravens when they were bad. So how big is that win really? Don't know. You did beat the Lions. You beat them pretty handily. But they were also having a slump. So who knows? Did you catch them in their slump? That could not be that great of a win if that's the case. The Raiders. Everyone should beat the Raiders. Congratulations. You shut them out 31-0. That's good. That's a good, solid win. That shows that you are better than the bottom 18 teams. You're definitely better than the bottom 18. Congratulations. The Commies, you beat them 28-7. Good win, but Seattle should have beat them 38-0. But gave them a couple pity touchdowns. So how good are you really? Then you lost to the Chargers. This is the big one. The Chargers are a middle pack team. Like, they're the bottom of the top half. That's where I really think they are. I think they're number 14, 15, 16, somewhere around there. And you got beat by 6 points. So you got beat fairly well. And then the Eagles losing to the Eagles, no big deal. Anyone can lose to the Eagles and, it's okay. But you lost to the Jaguars. You can't lose to the Jaguars. They might make the playoffs. Might make the playoffs, but highly doubt it. And if they do make it, they're one and done. Then you lost to the Bills. Okay, the Bills have a reputation as one of the best teams in the NFL. You regularly lose to them in the regular season, so I can't say that's too bad right there. But you have 2 bad beats, and you have 2 acceptable beats. But your wins, I mean, the Lions one looks really good, but the rest of them are like, okay, you should be doing that. So how good are the Chiefs really? That's why I have you at number 8. I have to see more. You show me that you can beat some of these other teams that you got on your remaining schedule, which you got a pretty easy fucking schedule coming up. The Broncos might be able to beat you. The Colts might be able to beat you, but I doubt it. The Cowgirls won't. The Texans might be able to upset you because their defense is just that good. The Chargers, Maybe, but I highly doubt it. You got the Titans. That's a win. Broncos second time. Who knows? We'll see how good the Broncos really are. And you're about to tell us this week. So if you smoke the Broncos this week, then I don't see you doing too bad. You're going to make the playoffs. Like, if you beat the Broncos here, there's no way you miss the playoffs. And then you finish out with the Raiders. Guaranteed win. The Raiders suck. All right. So what I have is your floor is 8-9. If things go badly for you, you lose to the Broncos twice. You lose to the Colts. You lose to the Texans and the Chargers. If you lose all those games, you're 8-9. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think your ceiling is 13-4. I don't think you're going to do that either. I think you're going to be right in the middle. I think you're going to be 11-6, which means you're going to make the playoffs, but you're not going to win your division probably. You're going to barely lose your division by like a game. Number 7, the Buccaneers, sitting at 6-2. This team has shown that they can be really, really good, but I still have to see more. Like, let's get into what they've done this season, and that'll explain it. That's why I'll explain why I have them at 7 and not higher. So their wins: you beat the Falcons barely. That's not good. You're supposed to stomp the Falcons. The Falcons suck. You barely beat the Texans. Okay, a lot of teams are barely beating the Texans. I can't hold that too much against you, but Seattle did beat them 27-19 instead of you beating them 20-19. The Jets, you barely beat the Jets. That's not good. How can you only beat the Jets by 2 points? That's messed up. The Seahawks, you did beat the Seahawks, but when you played the Seahawks, 3 of their 4 secondary starters were out. 2 of their D-line players were out. Seahawks were down 5 of their starting 11 defensive players. That's why you won. That and a missed field goal from Jason Myers in the first half. If Jason Myers makes that field goal in the first half, you don't win that game. Seahawks run out the clock. They're up on you 38-35, and they just run out the clock instead of giving you a chance to get it back. That game is over there. So technically you should have lost that game, but you got lucky. And if the Seahawks were healthy, it wouldn't have even been that close. Seahawks would have smoked you. I'm sorry. It would have happened. You beat the 49ers, a dilapidated, bedridden 49ers. Congratulations. You did beat them by 11 points, which is probably the biggest margin they've lost by, I think, this season. But they had almost none of their starters. Like, none. And then you beat the Saints 23-3. You should have beat them by more than that. I'm good that you held them to 3. That means your defense did its job, but your offense didn't do its job because 23-3? Seattle went 44-13 on them. And the only reason they got some of those points is because the refs gave them a touchdown. Okay. You lost to the Eagles. I can't hold that against you. The Eagles are a good team. And you didn't lose that badly. But you did lose badly to the Lions. And we have yet to see where the Lions really are. So, Buccaneers, I do think you belong in the top 10. When fully healthy, I think you're a good team. But I think when it comes down to it, if you would have played the Seahawks when they were healthy or the 49ers when they were healthy, you would have lost both of those games. And you'd be sitting here at 4-4. Just a thought. Let's see, going forward for the rest of the season. You got the Patriots. Who knows if you'll win that one? Bills. Who knows if you'll win that one? I'm pretty sure you're going to lose to the Rams. And then you're going to win out after that. Cardinals are the only ones in that last stretch that have a chance of possibly upsetting you. Other than that, you look like you got 6 straight wins at the end of the season. So I got your floor at 11-6, and your ceiling at 13-4. I don't think you're winning all three of those question mark game, or those both of those question mark games. So I think you're going to finish 12-5 or maybe 11-6. I'm going to go with 12-5 is what you finish at. So congratulations, Buccaneers. I think you're going to definitely be in the playoffs. Number 6, the Patriots. I don't really think the Patriots belong here. Their strength of wins isn't that impressive. Let's take a look. Patriots. Here's who you beat. You beat the Dolphins, 33-27. Congratulations. Not a big deal. Panthers. You stomped them. You're supposed to. Good job. The Bills. That don't know how good or bad of a win that is, because we don't know how good the Bills really are. And at that time, they weren't doing good. And you beat the Saints. Barely. You can't let the Saints score 19 points on you. That's not good. That is not a good result. The Titans. You did what you're supposed to do against the Titans, but there's still a lot of points to allow them to get. They suck. The Falcons. You barely beat the Falcons by 1 point, and that was because of a missed extra point, which, how often does that happen? Not very often. That's pure luck. And then you beat the Browns. You beat the Browns good. That's what you're supposed to do. And then your losses. You lost to the freaking Raiders, man. You can't lose to the Raiders. Especially by a touchdown. The Raiders suck. They're one of the worst teams in the league. And then the Steelers. You failed the barometer test. You don't really belong in the upper half of the league. Those 2 losses prove that. You should be at like number 18, number 17 maybe. But you're definitely not a top half of the league team. Now let's look at your schedule going forward. The only reason why I think you'll be in the playoffs. You got the Buccaneers. You'll probably lose that game. If they're healthy at all, I think you lose that game by a big amount. Then you got the Jets. Winnable. Easy. Bengals. Win. Saints. Or Giants. Win. If you don't win those 3 games, you definitely ain't doing nothing for the rest of the season. You're out of the playoffs if you don't win all 3 of those. The Bills. You'll probably lose that game. The Ravens. I don't know yet. We'll have to see if the Ravens are really good. I think they might be back, but I don't know. And then the Jets and the Dolphins. You should finish out there. I got your floor at 12-5. That should win your division. Just barely. But I think your ceiling is just right above that at 13-4. Because I honestly don't think you're going to beat the Bucks or the Ravens or the Bills. And that will already put you at 5 losses. 12-5, like I said. Congratulations, Patriots. You're number 6 probably for the last time. Then you got the Bills. How good are the Bills really? I mean, going off history, they should be one of the the best teams in the AFC. They're top 2 team in the AFC. But let's see what they're doing this year. Let's take a look. Bam. You beat the Ravens 40-41. Okay, but the Ravens weren't doing good at the beginning of the year. That's not a good indication right there. The Jets. You did what you're supposed to do. Congratulations. The Dolphins. You beat them by 10 points. Okay, but not as good as it should have been. You should have beat them by more. The Saints. 31-19. You allowed the Saints to score 19. That's also not good. Like, it's not a curb stomp like it should have been. You should have curb stomped them like the Seahawks did. But you didn't. And then the Panthers. Okay, you curb stomped the Panthers. You're supposed to. You did what you're supposed to do there. Good job, Bills. And then you beat the Chiefs. And with the Chiefs finally healthy, that's probably your best win of the season. We don't know yet. We still have to see how the Chiefs do against the Broncos. If the Chiefs stomp the Broncos, beat them by more than a touchdown, then that's a good-ass win right there. But if not, that might not be that good of a win. We'll see. You lost to the Patriots, which at this point, we don't know how good or bad that is. But then you lost to the Falcons by 10 points. The Falcons suck. You can't lose to the Falcons and call yourself good. You just can't do it. I'm sorry. Bills, how good are you? That's why I have you at 6 and not above that. Or 5. That's why I have you at 5. And I don't think you can possibly rise above that because you lost to the Falcons, man. That's terrible. All right. 4. I got the Broncos, but fraudulent. Because I don't think the Broncos are that good. I think they've just been really fortunate to have their schedule that they've had. They're fortunate to be in the AFC. The AFC is weak this season. Let's see your wins. Titans. Barely. By 8 points. You're supposed to stomp them. Bengals. You did a good job there, but you should have scored more on that that 0 defense. They have 0 defense. You should have smoked them even further. But I guess that's good enough. That's a point in your favor. The Eagles. You beat the Eagles. That's a good win. That is a good win. Can't take that away from you. But can you repeat that? We'll see. Then the Jets. You barely beat the Jets. How do you beat the Eagles and then barely beat the Jets? That's not that good. Then you got the Giants. You barely beat the Giants by a point. Then the Cowgirls. You allowed the Cowgirls to score 24. They only scored 17 on the Cardinals. How good are you, really? And then the Texans. You barely beat the Texans after C.J. Stroud goes out in the second quarter. That's not boding well for your power rankings here. Let's see here your losses. The Colts. Okay, we don't know how good the Colts really are. Upper half of the league, likely. Top 10, not really likely. And then you lost to the Chargers. You could say the Chargers got lucky to win that game. I'll accept that. But you did lose. So I think you're somewhere between rank 11 and 15. Because I think the Chargers are 16, 17, or 16 or 18. So there you go, Broncos. Your strength of schedule. I got you winning at least 2 more games. Got the Raiders, the Chiefs, the Commies, the Raiders, the Packers, the Jaguars, the Chiefs, the Chargers. You could win half of those, or you could lose 6 of those. I got you winning at least 3 more. So I got your floor at 10-7 and your ceiling at 14-3. I don't think you'll hit your ceiling. I think you will be somewhere right in the middle, probably 12-5. That's where I think you belong, Broncos. But I think it's enough to win your division. Just barely. All right, let's move on to number 3. The Seattle Seahawks. And yes, it's my team. But I'm also showing you how unbiased I am by having them at 3. Because most people are homers and would have their team number 1 even if they don't deserve it. But I think the Seahawks are one you could literally put at number 3 and it would be reasonable. Or number 1 and it would be reasonable. But I have them at 3 because they haven't yet proven that they can beat the teams ahead of them. Let's see, the Seahawks. How has their season gone? Okay, look at their wins. They beat the Steelers 31-17, and it was more dominant than that. The Steelers got lucky to score 2 touchdowns on very, very short field goals or field position due to turnovers. They got lucky, but we still dominated them. The Saints smacked their asses down 44-13. That's what you're supposed to do to the Saints. They suck, and they got gifted a touchdown. Gifted. So it could have been 44-6. Easily. We beat the Cardinals. It says 23-20, but it should have been 30-6 because there was a touchdown called back by a bullshit JSN holding call where the guy ran him over, and because he put his arms out to brace himself, they called him for a holding. Complete horseshit. That's 7 points off. That's a 30 point for the Seahawks right there. And then they made 2 more bad fucking PI calls. They made a bad holding call and a bad PI call, which were ticky-tacky at best. They were horrible calls. Even the announcer said so, which kept the drives alive for the Cardinals, which scored them 14 points. It should have been 30-6, but the refs helped them out big time. Then the Jaguars. We were injured as hell coming into this game. We were still missing like 4 of our starting defensive players, and we still beat them 20-12. We still allowed them only 12 points, missing almost a third of our starting defensive players. That's a good win. Then the Texans. We're the only team to score more than 20 on the Texans. Their defense is that good. And that score, that 19 from them, is misleading. 7 of that was a defensive touchdown from a strip fumble in the end zone from Sam Darnold, which they recovered for a touchdown. Their offense scored 13 points. That's it. Then the Commies. We just beat them 38-14. And that's because we took the foot off the gas. The Seahawks literally gifted them 2 touchdowns by playing prevent defense, and at the end, after Jaden Daniels got hurt, they just let them score because they felt bad for them. And that's what their score is, 38-14. Now let's look at the losses. First loss of the season to the 49ers when they were healthy. The only team player they had out that game to start was Brandon Ayuk. Everyone else was in. Kittle did get hurt during the game and went out after scoring a touchdown. 7 of their 17 points. He scored 40% of their points and then went out with an injury. They only scored 10 more points after that. And then Nick Bosa makes a hell of a play on our right tackle and pushes him into Sam Darnold, causing a fumble on the final drive where we were in scoring range. They should have won that game. But the reason they didn't is because they tried to get cute with some stupid calls with Jalen Mildew. And then they weren't ready. You could tell. They only had 1 snap. They only had 1 series for the entire preseason. The starters were not used to playing together. You could tell they were confused. They weren't ready. They were tired because they hadn't gotten any reps yet. They weren't ready for that game. And they still barely lost. And then you got the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers come in and score 38. But that's after 3 of the 4 secondary defensive players go down. Or they weren't even in the game to start. And then you had 2 more defensive players go down during the game. So you're missing almost 50% of your defensive players. And you still barely lose. And the only reason you lose is because Jason Myers misses a rare 45, 46-yard field goal that he almost makes 100% of the time. If he doesn't miss that, This game goes to the Seahawks. Seahawks should be 8-0 right now. Not should be, but could be. Seattle Seahawks could be 8-0 right now. Yes, they deserve to be in the top 3 and possibly number 1. That's how they're playing. Let's look at their remaining schedule. Cardinals. I got that as a win with a question mark. We should win that game, but for some reason, we play worse at home. So there might be a chance the Cardinals win. They might be able to beat us in Seattle, because I think our crowd noise is affecting our defense. So our defense isn't playing as well. That's something we got to get fixed. And then we hit the Rams the following week. That game, I don't know. I think because we're a better road team, I think we win that game. But I think we split with the Rams, because I think the Rams and Seahawks are pretty equally matched. I think it's a coin toss between the two teams of who wins week to week. It's 50-50. Then we got the Titans. That's going to be a win. Then we got the Vikings. Probably going to be a win, but I have a question mark because I'm not 100% sure that something fluky doesn't happen. There's always one game every season that some weird shit happens to every team and they lose a game that they shouldn't lose, but we should win that game. The Falcons, we're going to win. They suck. Then we got the Colts. I don't know how good the Colts are. I think the next couple weeks are going to really tell me. And then I'll be able to determine whether we win that game or not. And then we got the Rams again. But we got the Rams at home. I think the Rams win that game because our defense can't play as well at home because of the crowd noise. And then we got the Panthers. That's a W. And then we got the 49ers to close out. So for the Seahawks, I got a floor of 11-6 and a ceiling of 14-3. Because I do think we're going to lose at least one more game. I'd say it's likely we lose 2 more games. We'll probably lose to the Rams once, and we'll lose to one other team, maybe. But, yeah, 13-4.